Last week, the S&P 500 made a couple attempts toward this all-time high and it fell. So the question is, will it continue to attempt to take out the all-time high and make a new high? Or is it going to reverse back and head toward the March low? In this video, we're going to take a look at the stock market sentiment and the internals, along with the cash index of the S&P 500 and the other major market indexes to see what they are all telling us. Is this market made a double top, or is it going to continue to push higher to a new all-time high? Looking at this S&P 500 weekly chart, you can see that the price is still grinding upward toward the all-time high and toward the top of this channel here. And last week, it did have a little bit of a narrower range than the past week, and they only have a range of somewhere a little bit over 61 point. For the week, it only closed up somewhere around a little bit over 21 point, and currently it is just a little bit under 21 point from the all-time high. And from the March low, it is 1,180.99 above the March low. And looking at the moving average here, here's the 10-week moving average and also the 40-week moving average. The price is above these two moving averages, and also it is one time framing up on a weekly basis, so the trend is still up. Looking at the sentiment chart here, you see that the VIX is still inside of this 20 and 30 range level, so nothing has changed for the last few weeks. And the put-call ratio did come up a little bit. It came up to 0.7. So got to pay attention to that. If it creep into this 0.75, then we could see a little bit of a risk off on the market here. But other than that, it's pretty much remain at the same level near the for the last few weeks. And here, looking at the up-down volume ratio on the New York Stock Exchange, not much happening, very subdued. That could due to the summer month. In the month of August, everything kind of slowed down. But looking at the advanced decline on a daily basis, it also is relatively positive on a positive day, and did get a negative day on Thursday, but that was pretty mild. It's only like minus 510. So it's 510 more decliner than advancer. But there are a couple of days that is relatively weak on the advanced decline on the update. But here you see this down day on Tuesday. It is got a positive 77, while the index, the S&P 500, was down. And so was on Friday. It was down slightly, down half a point or so. The advanced decline is actually positive 23. And here on the new high, new low in the New York Stock Exchange, there's 37 new high, more new high than new low on Friday. Again, this is not making an expansion up toward the 200 level. We'd like to see this to get at least close to the 200 level as the S&P 500 pushes through to a all-time high. And the advanced decline, nothing there to worry about. If there's no divergence, it's basically moving along with the index. When the index comes down, the AD line pull back, and when the index push up, the AD line advances. So that's all in sync right now. And until we see some sort of negative divergence, right now we're basically not too concerned about the advanced decline. On the NASDAQ, you can see that the NASDAQ new high, new low also came down a bit last week. And on Friday, it closed with 41 more new high than new low, but the index was actually down about 13 point, just slightly above 0.1%, down just about 0.1%. So it's not much of a negative day, although it is down, but the new high, new low is still positive. And the advanced decline, similarly to the New York Stock Exchange, it is in sync with the index. As the index pull back, so does the advanced decline. And as it move up, the AD line also move up accordingly with it. So they are all in sync, and the internal and the sentiment still saying that the market has not changed its posture from the last couple of weeks, in which it was basically in a consolidation mode, grinding a little higher, little bit at a time. So we're still looking for this market to push it through its pushes through its all-time high and put in a new all-time high. And looking at this index chart here, we see all the indexes is pretty much in a little bit of a consolidation last week, not much happening. There was no index made new high last week. Now let's take a look at the SP 500 cash index. On this daily chart here, we see that the price is still above this channel here, and right now it is getting up here to test the closing high, the closing all-time high. Because if you see here on the closing all-time high, the value is 3386.15. And last Wednesday, it actually made an attempt to try to get above that, and it went above at 3387.89 on the high. So it did got above the closing high, but it failed to get up to the all-time high. And you can see that it kind of pulled back a little bit on Thursday and Friday. So on next week we basically going to be keeping an eye on is to see would it continue to pull back and possibly test this 3328.45, essentially come down to this trend line before make another push up to the all-time high at 3393.52. Or would it actually break this trend line, come down and fill this low gap here and possibly get down and test this 3259.81. So essentially, we trace this gap fill and retest this area before make another push and try to put in a new all-time high above the 3393.52. Now the question is, after if put in a new all-time high, how high would it go? Well, the thing is, I'm looking at this channel here, so there's a possibility that it could get above this 3700 level. And if I put in a Fibonacci retracement and take a look at some of the possibility on the extension. So if I take the very high to the March low, you can see that the 127 extension, there's a level at 3720.37. So that is fairly close to this 3700. And let me extend this out, and then we could see what happened if we do get up to that 127 level. So you can see that if it get up to this 127 level at 3220, and essentially that would hit the top of this channel trend line, and that would be somewhere around near the end of August, somewhere around right now, pointing at August 26. And looking at the ETF SPY, the ETF for the S&P 500, remember last week we were talking about this high volume node from the volume profile, that it could come up and possibly encounter some resistance here. And you could see that on Wednesday, Thursday, they both of those days came up and bump into this resistance and back off. So right now, we essentially are looking to see would it come back into this high volume zone here and chop around essentially near this trend line at 332.58, then get a bounce off of that 332.58 and into the high and possibly put in a new high. Now also put in the Fibonacci retracement here, and the 127 extension is close to that 372.3720 area for the cash index. So right now it is pointing at 371.94. So once again, if it breaks below this trend line here, then we're essentially looking for this to retrace back down to the 325.85 here before we get another push and get up to the all-time high and take out the all-time high, possibly put in a new all-time high there. So that's basically what I'm looking at on the ETF for the S&P 500. Now let's take a look at the other indexes. And if we take a look at the NASDAQ 100, you see that it came down and backtest this trend line, and it bounces right back on Wednesday after it finished backtesting that trend line here. So right now, we essentially are looking for this thing to continue to chop around here and pushes up along with the S&P 500 to a new high. If it pull back a little bit more, then we're essentially looking for this trend line as the initial support. And that would be somewhere around this 10,900 area here. And looking at the Dow Jones Transportation, you see the Dow Jones Transportation been quite strong recently, and it came up and took out this pivot high here, and that is essentially the February 20 pivot high. The high is 11,071.90. And on Wednesday, it is the high is 11,085.40. So it took out this high, this pivot high. And if the transportation is any indication of where the Dow Jones Industrial might be headed, then if we take a look at the Dow Jones Industrial, you can see that on the 20th or the 19th, this is the pivot high that the Dow Jones Industrial put in on the on February the 20th, and that is 29,409.10. So that is just right before the all-time high, all-time closing high of 29,551.4. So right now we essentially are looking for the Dow Jones Industrial. If it pulls back, look for this trend line and possibly this level 27,102 as a potential support for a bounce off to the 28,402.90 and then get into this gap here and get into this pivot high, possibly get up to the all-time high. And look at the Russell 2000. The Russell 2000 is also making a nice move. Seems to pull back a little bit. You could call this a bull flag or whatever. But if it continue to pull back, we essentially are looking for this level here, this trend line, for the 1,539.70 as the potential support for the push up above the 1,610.60. And that's the next initial potential resistance. But again, the Russell is relatively strong recently, and we are essentially looking for this possibility of comeback and retest this level before it pushes up. But anything is possible. It could just gap up and push through this 1610.60. So as you can see, the stock market internal and also the sentiment is still pointing positive for the market as a whole. And also the first attempt toward the all-time high by any indexes is going to encounter some resistance. So it's no different than for what we saw on the SP500 last week. So we could see a little bit more of a pullback and possibly get the, test one of the recent support level or resistance level turn support. Then we most likely will see another attempt to push to into the all-time high and possibly put in a new all-time high. Now, anything is possible. Things could happen and we could get a black swan event and then it will just throw this market upside down. So, but right now, looking at the sentiment, the internal, that's basically the pulse of the market, and also the price action of the indexes and all the other indexes relatively to each other, they are all making upward move toward the previous pivot high. So again, until the price action or the sentiment had changed, we basically just follow the price. If you find this video to be informative and useful, be sure to click the thumbs up and also share this video with others. Thank you for watching. Good luck and stay safe.